You're listening to Ecto Portal, a journey into the unknown with Anthony Anderson and Verna Wilson.
I hope that you are seated comfortably with the light turned down and the curtains drawn.
Somebody there?
Hello, once again, to another journey to the unexplored, the unexplained, the unknown Ecto Portal. I'm Anthony Anderson, your host, and I'm here with my co-host,
Verna Wilson. Hi.
And today, this week, we're actually going to discuss on the show ghost stories that surround tragic fires.
You know, I'm surprised we haven't done a story about first responders before, because I bet they have a lot of stories.
Well, this isn't specifically first responders, it's ghost firefighters and ghost and fire tragedies.
Okay, well...
But we should do a show about first responders. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
But this one is literally just fire tragedies and the ghost stories related to them.
Yeah.
So we'll that's what we'll do on this week's show. There's some interesting tales, let me tell you. There's horrific tragedies, because fire, of course,
Fire would
is
bring
devastating.
that.
It can kill so many people so quickly, and it's just horrific all around.
Something that we would never ever hope to find out.
No. And we've actually had, we discussed on another episode of our show a number of years ago, the shirt-tailed triangle factory fire in New York.
I remember that, yeah.
About all those workers who were, basically this is, Lower East Side workers working slave labor, basically 10, 12-hour days. Couldn't take breaks, trapped in the upper floors of their factory, and of course a fire broke out, and it was horrific. This is similar to that kind of a deal.
Yeah.
And that one had ghost stories too on that episode. So if you want to check out that episode, it's actually pretty good.
Yeah, that was a good one. But
let's do the paranormal news. What do you say?
Yeah, let's go for it.
All right. And welcome to another edition of the Paranormal News. What stories have you got this week, Verna?
Well, there is going to be... Okay, now do you remember in your TV sets way back, there was an 800 number and you call Miss Cleo to tell your future?
Miss Cleo, man. You want to call your future, you call Miss Cleo.
Did anybody ever really call Miss Cleo?
Of course they did. Did you ever see the documentary about Miss Cleo?
No.
It's on Netflix or
I'd like
Amazon
to see
Prime.
that.
It's about how it was a scheme.
Well, there's a rapper called the Lady of Rage, and she is going to be playing Miss Cleo in a movie, or she did. It was on Lifetime Network. It came on July 23rd, and it was called
last month,
The Rise and Fall of Miss Cleo.
Wow.
And the lady and this the former Death Row Records rapper depicted Miss Cleo, who offered free calls to infomercial viewers to have their fortune read in the late 1990s and early 2000s. And actually, my friend Terry teases me and calls me Miss Cleo, but I probably never made as much money as she did. So anyway, Miss Cleo, who spoke with a very heavy Jamaican accent, was an LA native. And in the film, a relative of Cleo's calls her out for mocking her Jamaican heritage, and the biopic also uncovers Miss Cleo's deceitful success, noting that she was bringing in $24 million at one point for the Psychic Readers Network, where she was employed. Wow.
Yep.
So, however, it appears that in the movie that Miss Cleo, born Yorni Del Harris was unfazed by her problematic dishonesty because it allowed her, a single mother, to pay her bills and provide for her children. And Miss Cleo's fall came when she was investigated by the Federal Trade Commission for fraud, which is also highlighted in the Lifetime film. So if you guys have
Check it out.
Lifetime Network, and but there's more to the story. According to Newsweek, the scheme behind Psychic Readers Network involved them offering a free reading to customers who also called their toll-free line, but the customers were then directed to a 900 number and were charged $4.99 per minute. Whew, that's a lot per minute.
Yeah.
And the Washington Post noted that about 6 million people who made the calls were charged an average of $60. And in 2002, the FTC charged owners Access Resource Services and Miss Cleo's promoters, Stephen Fetter and Peter Stotz, with deceptive advertising, billing, and collection practices, and she wasn't indicted in that. But they also reported that Stephen Fetter and Peter Stotz settled the dispute by removing the $500 million debt owed by their many callers to the network and paying $5 million to the FTC, and uncashed checks were also given back to the customers. Whew, that's a lot of...
Yeah, that documentary, you have to check it out. Like I said, it's on Netflix or Prime, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But it goes into the whole thing, the whole fraud. There was a team of people answering phones, giving readings. Besides Miss Cleo. Miss Cleo was just the front woman.
She probably just thought, I'm just playing a role and I'm just paying my bills.
Yeah, she's supporting her kids.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'd be curious to see how Lifetime does it, because Lifetime they like to
see that.
They wrap up everybody's life in 82 minutes. So we'll see what that's really like. Interesting.
Now, what do you have?
Residents in Hudson Valley, New York, have seen a strange orb on the property.
Mm-hmm.
A New York resident said he saw a witness of a strange occurrence when a small ovalish light was spotted floating around the property. The Millerton resident says the orb seemed to move towards them when they first saw it out their window. It was like looking directly back at the homeowner. There could very well be a logical or rather than paranormal explanation, although the person filed a report to the UFO Reporting Center in August. Many reports of the so-called flying saucers of UFOs lend to describe the object as a disc-shaped, oval, or cigar-shaped. Sometimes it'll change shape, taking off at an unimaginably high rate of speed, or flashing lights emanating from it. Some believe the mysterious balls of light are the spirits of the deceased, ghosts. More often than not, these objects are just insects, dust, or maybe the low resolution of the cameras that they're captured with. The resident said to the report that they got up to use the restroom on the night of August 3rd, and out of habit, they checked their property cameras to have a look around. It was then that the Dutchess County resident said they noticed a small light, maybe white, maybe slight ovalish, on one of the property cameras. At first they said they dismissed it as a spider, but then realized it was actually moving through the fence gate. They just said, I decided to pull the curtain back, and I saw it. It was lit up real bright now, white like a flashlight, and it started coming towards me in the window like it had seen me. I got spooked, and I stomped my foot on the floor and yelled, hey, get out of there, or something along those lines. And it started going away from me, and then it stopped quickly and was hovering above the porch swing where I sit when I'm outside. The resident said that they closed the curtain and noticed when searching the camera that the object was gone. They said they went back to bed and had no memory of the incident when they later woke up. Then the person had taken screenshots from the encounter. They also claimed that a neighbor told them they had seen something that looked like flashlights in that same area, to the point that they thought someone was walking in the yard. So there you go. So these neighbors, or all these people, are seeing this weird orb of light.
You know, you and I never really put much stock in orbs whenever people talk about them, but if I saw one floating around a property,
through a fence,
then I would pay attention to that.
That's different than someone stomped on a rug and suddenly I saw 3,000 dead people.
Right. Well, yeah.
Dust. But yeah, it's something that big and that prominent, and it goes through things, and then it comes towards you when it sees you. If something changes direction and goes another direction, that's an orb to watch. It's the ones that just sort of,
right. There's a big difference. There's a big difference, folks, and we can talk about that in this show, because I mean, since you're talking about orbs now, because people always come up to me and say, what do you think of orbs? And I always think, oh no, orbs again. But now there's a big difference. When you see something like that, then you pay attention because it is probably somebody's energy field, in my opinion.
Well, you got to think if a security camera of a house, and it's prominent enough for that to pick up and follow it.
Right.
That's a big orb. That's not just a dust particle. It's not just a little tiny insect.
Right, exactly.
That's something bright and big enough and weirdly shaped that the camera caught it consistently, and then you saw it phase through a fence.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that's beyond an orb. To me, that's like an entity or who knows? Energy source. We don't know.
Yeah, we don't. But anyway, I don't hear too many orbs like that captured that often.
No, not like that. Usually, I mean, I kind of like the fact that we have all these security cameras now because they're capturing stuff we would never ever see,
or that we could just speculate about and never. Yeah.
But if you're not awake and you're not looking, you're not going to see it. But those cameras are up 24 hours 7. So
yep.
7 days a week. So they're capturing stuff.
Yeah.
Cool. It's cool though.
It's a good thing. Yeah.
All right, folks. That's the paranormal news. All right, that was our paranormal news. Now this week, interestingly enough, when we pick topics, it can be challenging for us, and sometimes topics show up when we least expect it. And in this particular case, I don't know what I was watching or looking at. It was a story about a tragic fire, and I thought, with so many fires that happen every day around the world, there's got to be ghost stories connected with these fires, right? So I thought, let me see if I can come up and collect some stories that surround a tragic fire, or firefighters, or something to do with fire. Let me see if I can find any and group them together. Maybe that would be an interesting topic, thus ghost stories on fire. Well, I did find some, 3 of them. The first one is more about firefighters in general. It's not really a ghost story, but it sort of is, sort of the unexplained thing. And the other 2 are actually do have ghosts in relation. But this first one was about firefighters in Chicago. Now, in 1924 in Chicago, Illinois, a firefighter, Frank Levy, reported to work on Good Friday. He was normally a happy, optimistic, and he was pretty good-natured, and his fellow co-workers realized this. But on this particular day when he showed up, he was kind of distant and solemn and with his fellow firefighters. The others didn't really notice this change of mood in him, so he proceeded with his duties, and a 4-alarm fire sounded outside of their jurisdiction. But they decided to go help anyway. Frank had finished washing a window, and just before he left, he lay his hand on it and said out loud to himself, "This is my last day on the fire department." Now, the crew arrived quickly at the scene of the fire, a burning building, and headed straight in. They had no masks or breathing support at this point, and they had to crawl back and forth on their hands and knees to get fresh air while they were working.
This is 1924, so yeah.
The fire lasted over an hour, and still things did not seem to be dying down. And it was then that their fire chief yelled for all of them to evacuate the building immediately and get out. Now, not all of them made it. 8 of them had died, and their bodies were found, and one of those was Frank Levy.
Oh, man.
And he had a wife and 2 little girls, I believe.
Oh, that's sad.
So once the surviving firefighters, they all arrived back at the station, saddened, disappointed. The fire consumed their fellow firefighters. They noticed on the window, Levy's handprint was still very clear and present on the glass. Now, they tried to wipe the handprint away, but to no avail. The handprint firmly remained present on the glass pane of the window. Even the local coroner compared a fingerprint of Levy to the handprint, and they matched perfectly. Now, that same handprint remained on the glass window until the 20th anniversary of Levy's death. It was then that a local paperboy had tossed and rolled a rolled paper with too much force and accidentally breaking the glass window.
Little jackass.
He didn't know.
Well, come on.
Now they would never be able to tell just why that handprint remained in the place for so long. Because I guess they had tried to wipe it clean and it wouldn't wipe clean. They used all kinds of
crazy
window cleaners and solvents, and nothing would remove the handprint.
That is crazy.
So yeah, I guess they'll never
Till
know.
the paper boy spoiled things.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe Maybe Levy can haunt the paperboy now.
Probably. I don't know.
There are other stories of firefighters that relate to paranormal activity. In one particular story, a fireman said, "Our firehouse isn't haunted, but one of our engines is." And one firefighter said, "We were responding to a call in a dark, secluded industrial area one night when the engine suddenly sputtered and stalled and coasted to a stop right in front of a railroad crossing with no gates. Just as we stopped, a freight train came through. The engine started right up and ran fine after the train passed."
I've heard of a similar story like that before.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah.
Another firefighter relayed, "I worked for a department that had lost a few members in its time. Over the course of the first few months I was there, I noticed strange noises in the bay. Once I walked in the front door, only to hear the back door slam. I walked back to see who it was, and when I opened the back door, no one was there. There was fresh snow on the ground and no tracks. Another time I went down to the bay in the middle of the night. I heard distinct footsteps walking around one of the rigs on the other side of the bay. I called out, but no one answered. I got spooked and I crept around the bay with an axe, trying to find the intruder. No one there. Later, I happened to mention to the chief that I had heard some weird stuff in the station at night, and he got a strange look on his face and said, 'Let me guess, footsteps behind engine number 3 and a creepy feeling by the back door.' He goes, 'I got the same story from one of our captains about hearing footsteps and all that. Guess someone's still hanging around.'"
More than one person witnessed.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's what did they call it? They call it it's like an imprint, a memory.
Yeah.
Okay, so now I found two very tragic fire stories with ghost stories related.
Okay.
The first one is the deadly fire of Milwaukee. In 1857, financier Daniel Newhall completed Newhall House, named after himself. That was his dream. It was a 6-story building and cost $275,000. In today's money, that's $9,291,583.91.
If I could whistle, I'd let out a low one.
Yeah. On the ground floor was a massive ballroom, a bank, an insurance and real estate agency. So that was the retail floor.
Wowee.
The upper floors were a hotel, a luxurious hotel. The building was not without its troubles, and there were a total of 9 owners over the lifespan of the building. That was 26 years. Fire broke out at Newhall House over 20 times during those 26 years. The first fire happened on Valentine's Day in 1863, and the last fire was January 1883. And each time, firefighters managed to control the flames, but the final fire was so overwhelming, it overtook rapidly, and the building would not stand a chance to survive once more.
Well, if that's the picture of it, that's a massive building.
So at 2 a.m. on the morning of January 10th, 1883, the watchman, William Mackenzie, was out walking the grounds, making sure the building was secure, and he passed the elevator on the 5th floor. Right away, he noticed smoke rising from the grill. He quickly stepped into the elevator and rode it to the first floor, where he found the fire had already engulfed the foyer.
Yikes.
And the entrance that led out to Michigan Street. He called to his engineer to call for help. Flames had already reached the roof before the firefighters even left their own station.
Oh, shoot.
When they arrived at the scene, it was chaos and the building was engulfed in flames. Now, firefighter Sam McDowell said by the time we reached the hotel, the building was like a flaming straw stack. Men and women could be seen at their windows shouting for help, screaming in despair.
That's terrible.
At this point, the fire was under control and would not spread. Now, in the morning, teams of firefighters were still fighting the flames. The fortunate hotel guests on the lower floors were able to flee for their lives, while the ones above screamed out windows and the flames surrounded them. In panic, people began to leap from their windows. Assistant Chief John Black sent in a crew with hoses to stop the fire spreading, while another laid out a canvas tarp to catch those that were jumping from the windows from above. Now around 5 a.m. the Newhall's rear wall of the building collapsed and it came down on the fire trucks.
Yikes.
Less than 4 hours, the building was no more. Charred bodies lay in embers, and throughout the warped, scorched timber, some were barely recognizable as human. In the following days after sifting through the rubble, they pulled over 70 bodies out. It was decided a total of 90 were dead.
Oh my gosh, that's horrible.
Now, a new building was put up on the same property today that is the Hilton Garden Inn. But even though it's a hotel of luxury, it's also said to be one of the most haunted hotels in Milwaukee.
Well, look what it's built over.
Exactly. Guests
Yeah.
have shared strange stories of unexplained noises where no source could be found. Some hear clanking around the building, and doors swinging open and slamming shut on their own. One of the known spirits in the property likes to pull the hair of hotel guests when they're alone in their rooms. And in rooms 201 and 326 are those with heightened activity. It seems so many of those guests from the Newhall house never checked out.
Yikes.
So there you go. I mean, obviously, when you have a great fire,
And especially a huge place like that.
yeah, people are crammed together and trapped, and they lose their lives. That's a lot of anxiety, fear, terror, hurt, pain.
Now, let me ask you about Newhall House. They talk about the retail side of it. Did he actually live there?
No.
I didn't think
Remember,
so.
it's retail on the bottom and hotel rooms on the
Oh,
other
right.
floors.
But I mean, did he live? But he didn't live there at all,
No.
even in the hotel.
Nope.
Okay.
Nope, not at all.
All right.
Now we have one more story, and this one's, I think, even more tragic than that one.
Oh yeah. This.
It's the Collinwood School fire. Now,
Oh, I see a picture of it. It looks awful.
On March 4th, in 1908, school custodian Fritz Herter lit the furnace in the basement of the Lakeview School before the children arrived so the classrooms on the upper 3 floors would be warm. This was located just outside Cleveland, Ohio. The building was made of brick, but the schoolhouse inside was made of wood. Now, on this particular day, there were over 325 children attending school from ages 5 to 15. After the children arrived, they settled into their classrooms with their teachers. Frank went back to the basement where he began to sweep the floor when he spotted smoke coming from the front under the front stairway. He ran upstairs and rang the smoke alarm. Kids were soon running, trying to escape the flames. They panicked, and they realized it was not a fire drill, and their teachers tried to keep them calm and walking down in a line from the second floor to the main entrance. Now, as the teacher and the children arrived on the first floor, it was already packed with kids trying to escape, jumping on top of one another. One of the teachers lost her footing and was trampled to death by her students
Oh yikes.
in the mass hysteria to escape. Now, soon firefighters and family arrived and tried to pry open the main entrance doors with no success. They literally had melted, closed from the intense heat.
Oh my gosh.
Firefighters began to take kids down the fire escapes, and eventually they were able to break the main entrance door down, get inside, and what they saw was horrific. Children, many dead from the fire and heat, others still alive but burned badly. The sad thing is the fire department was made up mostly of volunteers, so speed of help was not instant.
Oh man.
The fire consumed the entire building in about 34 minutes. The fire department and the railroad workers were the ones to move in and remove the dead.
Oh.
Over 172 children lost their lives in the fire, and 2 teachers were lost and their bodies were never found.
Oh.
When the bodies arrived at the morgue, they were laid out in rows of 10 with a total of 16 rows. Many of the children's remains fell apart as they were removed from the debris of the building fire. Families walked the rows of kids looking for their loved ones, and in the end, over 19 kids and 1 adult was not identified as the remains were too damaged.
Oh jeez.
Now, not long after the tragedy, some of the families reported unusual activity in their own homes. Some claimed to have seen the figures of their own deceased children and hearing their voices call out from other rooms. And they claimed that in time, this activity slowed and faded away.
Oh.
Another school was built on the same grounds, the Collinwood Memorial School, and it closed in the 1970s and remained abandoned and deserted. Now, those that lived near this old abandoned school claim to see a moving light in the second floor window, and locals swear the building is haunted. And those that dared to break in and investigate have encountered cold spots. They've heard distant sound of screaming children inside. Now, beside the building is a memorial garden where the original Lakeview School stood, Next door, people who visited have smelled smoke, which turns into a putrid smell, driving most of the people out of the garden. Now, in 2004, the memorial school was demolished, leaving only the garden beside it. A new school has been built on the property, but will the kids return? That's the question.
Well, a lot of emotions left behind. Even if the kids, their spirits have gone on since then. Emotions.
You know what's interesting, though?
Stick around, I think.
Nowadays, if there's something like this happened, a tragedy, they would tear the building down and build a park or something, but they wouldn't want to build on the property again. Mm-hmm. Back then, they built a school right over it. The property where the original school was turned into a garden, and they built the new school next to it. Then they demolished that and built another school right there. So it's kind of a memorial, but they still keep the school there.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, well, at least, that first school, can you imagine opening the doors and seeing that in front of you, all those kids burned and disfigured?
No, that would be ingrained in my mind forever.
And I have no doubt that the new building probably will have ghostly experiences. I bet you they'll hear some kids.
I can bet it
screaming, smell smoke. I bet you that stuff will all happen.
Interesting that the families heard their own kids for a while, and then at home. But then if something just happened to you and you want to come tell your family, and you're a spirit,
you would go home.
You would go home first. But they said that it faded, so they probably they moved on. But they probably were trying to. That's the first thing a kid would do, is tell his family what happened.
Yeah. You would go home and say, "Whoa, what happened? I don't understand."
It's terrible.
Yeah. Pretty tragic.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's millions of other stories with ghosts and fire.
And the buildings are made differently too. They're made to be more careful of these things, with fire escapes, and they made fire escapes then, but they
had fire escapes.
But don't they have a lot more safety standards?
Oh, they do.
Yeah.
There's more exits. There's ways to get out of the buildings on both sides.
Right.
There's a lot of things in place now. There's sprinklers for one. Because if you set the sprinklers, it would turn on the whole building. And
smoke detectors too now.
We have a lot of stuff that have changed. Doesn't mean a fire can't still happen and be tragic.
Of course not. No.
But I can't even. Most of these stories, the same thing with the shirt tail factory. It's like 1912, 1910 to 1920s.
Yeah. Before a lot of these codes were in place. Yeah.
In these bigger cities. So this is obviously Cleveland, Ohio, but that Chicago firefighter story, and then the shirt tail in New York. So wherever there's factories and safety wrongs, things can happen.
Yeah.
And it just sadly leads to tragic end of life, and spirits generally do follow that. So in this place, this is the third school? Second school?
Yeah, I think so.
So if it's a third school, and you're building again, you're stirring things up. So who knows what they're going to encounter? I'd be curious to find out, though.
Me too. Yeah.
All right, folks, there you go. Ghost Stories on Fire. Just an example of stories of ghosts related to fire. And I guess until next week, we'll say goodbye.
Yeah, see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Royalty-free, copyright-free music by Kevin MacLeod and Ross Bugden. Be sure to visit us at www.ectoportal.com. Check out our archives on YouTube, and head on over for new episodes to ectoportal.podbean.com.